We all love a good scary story, don't we? How about this one? In the heart of Chhattisgarh lies Sagar Lake, a beautiful but eerie body of water surrounded by dense trees and crumbling old temples. Tourists rarely visit after sundown, and the locals never go near it after dark. They say the lake takes a soul every year. No one remembers when it started, only that it never stopped. Now, this is where our story begins. In 2019, Kunal Verma, a travel blogger known for exploring offbeat places, arrived in Bilaspur. He heard rumors of the haunted lake and decided to investigate. Kunal wasn't your typical scaredy cat. He was a rational man. He believed every story had an explanation. Spirits, ghosts, just old village tales. For his vlog, he chose the title, Spending the Night at Haunted Sagar Lake. Real or myth? It was dusk when he reached the lake. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple. The water shimmered like a spilled sheet of molten gold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, birds chirped their evening songs and the gentle wind rustled through the leaves. It was the perfect setting for a relaxing evening, but Kunal had come prepared for a night by the lake. He set up camp near the edge, far from the dense trees that surrounded most of the lake. He settled down with a mug of hot tea, ready to spend the night documenting whatever unusual occurrences he might encounter. Around 10 p.m., he noticed something strange. The camera picked up ripples in the water, but there was no wind, no fish jumping, or any other signs of movement. To rule out any potential explanations, Kunal walked closer to the lake with his flashlight. Its beam dancing on the water's surface, illuminating nothing. But as he approached, the air around him suddenly turned icy cold, sending shivers down his spine. And then it happened. His camera, which had been recording the placid lake surface, suddenly began to glitch, the screen flickering wildly. "This is insane," he whispered, his voice echoing oddly in his own ears. "Guys, something weird is happening. This is crazy." Before he could react, a faint voice echoed across the lake. "Kunal," it whispered, the name hanging in the air. He froze, his heart pounding against his ribs. There was no one around, no one he knew. How could anyone be near him without him seeing them? Had someone snuck up on him in the dark? Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down, refusing to let fear get the better of him. He turned slowly, his flashlight beam sweeping across the darkness, searching for the source of the voice. But there was nothing, no one. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the erratic flicker of his camera screen. But then he noticed something, or rather someone reflected in the lake's surface. A woman's face, pale, eyes like black holes, staring directly at him. She seemed to be dressed in a red sari. Terror gripped him. He stumbled back, knocking over his chair. The camera slipped from his grasp and tumbled into the darkness. The woman in red disappeared from view. Adrenaline surged through him, urging him to flee. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of his car, his heart hammering in his chest. The next morning, villagers found his tent torn apart, his belongings scattered around the edge of the lake, as if someone had ransacked them in the middle of the night. His camera was still on, resting near the lake, its battery seemingly drained overnight. Kunal was gone. Diving teams from the local police force searched for 3 days, but they found no body. The only clue was a set of drag marks near the edge of the water, as if someone or something had tried to pull him in. Now, the legend of Sagar Lake continued. Locals say the lake was once the site of a mass drowning. During the early 1800s, a tyrannical king ruled the land. He had many wives, but his gaze was always searching for something more. One day, he set his eyes on a young woman named Ronnie, who lived with her brother and a group of female friends. The king sent his men to bring her to his palace, but Ronnie refused to go. She knew the king's intentions and would rather die than become his captive. Enraged, the king devised a cruel plan. He accused Ronnie's brother of plotting against him and had him put to death. Then he turned his attention back to Ronnie, issuing an ultimatum. "Either accept my proposal or watch your brother die." Before Ronnie could respond, the king's men burst into her home, dragging her and her friends toward the palace. Ronnie screamed for help, but no one came. The king had taken away her brother's head. The villagers, enraged by the king's tyranny, plotted their revenge. They waited until the king and his men were asleep, and then they made their move. Led by Ronnie's friend, they marched to the palace, smashing the doors and awakening the king. In the ensuing chaos, the villagers grabbed the king's crown and threw it into the nearby lake, now called Sagar. Then they fled into the night, pursued by the king's guards. The king, furious and humiliated, vowed to find the person who had thrown his crown into the lake. But the villagers were prepared. They led the king on a wild goose chase through the forest, keeping just out of his sight. By the time dawn broke, the king, exhausted and ashamed, returned to the palace. But his humiliation was complete. Without his crown, he was no longer king. From that day forward, he lived as a pauper, forever haunted by the memory of his lost dignity. But the story doesn't end there. The villagers weren't satisfied with simply humiliating the king. They wanted justice for Ronnie and her friends. So they returned to the lake and pushed it to its banks. The king's guards and soldiers, along with Ronnie and her friends, were drowned. The king watched in horror as his men and his one true love perished in the lake. Consumed by grief and guilt, he took his own life. And so it is said that every year on the night of their death, the souls of those drowned people rise from their watery graves and gather near the lake. They whisper the names of those who have come to the lake in search of adventure or thrills. And if you hear your name whispered by the water, it's already too late. Some nights the water ripples with no cause. On others, mist floats just above the surface and a red figure stands in the middle of the lake, watching.